spirit, body, and mind. Quote, religion is belief in someone else's experience. Spirituality is having your own experience. Deepak Chopra. Chopra's wise observation suggests that there are multiple ways to awaken to the truth of our true nature and thus begin the process of changing our consensus reality. Having our own experience is the most persuasive method. A core truth of religions, that everyone contains a divine spark, can trigger interest in finding that spark within oneself. One truth, many forms. Consider this scenario, another form. At a much anticipated press conference in the near future, when the weight of evidence begins to set in, scientists will be ready to announce to the world their findings, if not as fact, then at least as highly confirmed scientific hypothesis that there is indeed an afterlife. Naturally, this would only confirm what the mystics have been telling us for centuries, but now science will be fully behind the new claims. The press conference would continue by stating that although the details of the afterlife are not fully known, the researchers are reasonably certain that everyone will experience something like a life review upon their death. Each individual will experience not only every event and every emotion of their life, but also the effects their behavior, positive or negative, has had on others. The usual defense mechanisms with which we hide from ourselves are sometimes cruel and less than compassionate behavior towards others has kept our negative behaviors out of awareness until the life review. When people who seek truth begin their life review before death, they will realize and then become fully aware that their actions and thoughts in the living years truly do have consequences. This scenario is not implausible. There are already sufficient evidence to present the above propositions as at least probable, or more likely than not, based on emerging evidence. Further studies will only increase the probability until it is accepted by all as fact. When this happens, the fallout will be revolutionary. When these findings are announced by science, it will become impossible for our culture to do business as usual, either economically or politically or in the universities, which are institutions of our culture and as such manifest and perpetuate the values of our culture. With this inevitable new perspective of spirit, assumptions about body-mind interactions will shift dramatically, and we will become complete human beings for the first time in recorded history. When it comes to changing the world, Albert Einstein was correct when he famously said, quote, "We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them," end quote. Most citations omit the remainder of this quote, which says, quote, "In order to solve our current problems, the next human will have to emerge," end quote. But who is this next human supposed to be? What will motivate people to begin their life review before death? What are the spiritual technologies that can facilitate this interpersonal transformation? Mapping the complete next human. Many think we have lost our connection to spirit. Indigenous elders and shamans repeatedly say that spirit, body, and mind is the sacred trinity that allows for all life on earth to thrive. Modern spiritual leaders say that if we wish to recover our humanity, we need to stop destroying one another and this beautiful planet. All agree it is absolutely essential we connect to the world of spirit. One way to begin is by exploring the science of consciousness. If we are not sovereign over our own minds, then we are not sovereign over anything. And we live in a society where others presently have the right, under law, to tell us what we may and may not experience in our own consciousness. This is an extraordinary invasion of privacy and sovereignty, and it appears at the root of chronic tragedies in the world today. We have thoroughly mapped the body and the brain somewhat, but the spirit, as it pertains to all living entities, remains largely unexplored. Similar to the unknown variations of the spirit is that of the larger mind, and by extension, the power of our thoughts, which also remain a big open question. In the world of science, what do we really know about our thoughts? Is it possible to manifest what we are thinking? Ideas and thoughts are known to spread among people. Maybe the conscious experience is what connects us to other people. Fish swim in schools, birds fly in flocks, and ants have an ability to employ collective consciousness. All animals have a certain connection with their own species. What connection do humans have with each other in the realm of thought? These questions, currently outside of the purview of scientific technologies, can be effectively addressed with spiritual technologies. Eventually, the sheer volume of personal anecdotal experiences and their visible positive results will pique the curiosity of mainstream science. It is a shift that is already beginning to occur. First of all, people need to be motivated to partake in one of the many forms of spiritual technologies. In this era of New Age thinking, there is a veritable buffet of choices to begin this journey of finding a better way of life, a journey toward the new human. Circumstances that motivate people to look into their inner life and to change their consensus reality are often personal tragedy, societal, global disaster, a personal vision or visitation of some kind, or decisively beginning a disciplined meditative practice. The most exciting part of a personal spiritual journey is discovering the sacred trinity as it relates to spirit, body, and mind. When we look deeply into the essence of ourselves, we find all three. Our physical being is made up of DNA, and so is our soul. Each soul has its own blueprint. It is the embodiment of the spirit, the essence of who you are and the person you are meant to be. Each of us has our own spiritual DNA. Therefore, there is no one path to spirituality. This is so because each spiritual DNA is uniquely different from person to person. Each and every soul has its own unique form of spiritual practice and purpose, all leading to the one commonality of shifting our flawed perspective and reconnecting to the unified source of life. It is in this joint reconnecting with all of life and its source that consensus reality will change and the power of the new human will emerge. Theory of everything. Many thinkers of our age have searched for a theory of everything, a step toward the direction of a consensus reality. The closest contender in the scientific paradigm shift is the concept of the informed universe. It is a rediscovery of an ancient knowledge familiar to the Vedic tradition, Akasha, or the Akashic field. It has been touched upon by frontier scientists who have explored hypotheses ranging from a holographic universe to quantum zero-point energy to Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenic field theory, which draws on this ancient tradition. At the foundation of the Akashic field, or a field concept, that philosopher and scientist Ervin Laszlo proposes is a vacuum-based hollow field in which the universe is a highly integrated, connected, coherent system. It is much like a living organism, its crucial feature being that it binds us upon the information it has generated. Just as the ancients knew, a cosmic information field links organisms and minds in the biosphere with all the stars and galaxies throughout the universe, and it itself can be accessed. Indeed, the universe contains the memory of all events that are currently being played out and have ever existed throughout time. We just need to find the key to unlock these mysteries for everyone. It is clear that our culture has created a taboo atmosphere around serious discussions of personal spirituality. This is why we tend to feel uneasy and clumsy when discussing these topics with colleagues. The taboo against spirituality is so strong in academic circles that we feel awkward and embarrassed to even say the word mystic. We have all internalized this taboo to some degree. This generates feelings of unease and anxiety whenever spirituality is discussed as a core discipline, or on a level with sociology, history, psychology, or literature. Maybe the time is now for a quantum leap in human group consciousness by way of expanded scientific paradigms and other modualities. Is the next human Albert Einstein spoke of already here? How will we recognize this person? Are we the ones we have been waiting for? Or is there a spin-off human waiting to take the stage and usher in the next tremendous step forward? Will we turn to technology to assist us in this leap? The bionic exoskeleton, replete with a new skin and enhanced physical attributes, is rapidly emerging. Unfortunately, so too is an army of mighty cyborgs and flying drones patrolling a technological control grid. Will the light speed blending of person and machine result in transhumanism and a frightful new world order commanded by human-machine hybrids? Or hopefully, will we turn inward to tap into our unlimited abilities powered by spiritual sources? Will our path of transition lead us through the eye of the needle to a new dimension only the awakened eye of spirit can see? Spirit being reborn. As the spirit continues to be reborn, as the veil is lifted with each individual on his or her inner journey, our purpose in life will become crystal clear. As a natural result of reconnecting to our true nature, the most important aspects in our lives will become the pursuit of love and knowledge and away from money and power. The mass projection of illusions in the old world will fade away just as the earth-centric model of the universe did 500 years ago. As we grow, we will intuitively want to learn as much as possible about both this world and the transcendent world, and we will grow in our ability to feel kindness and compassion towards all living things. A consequence of embracing unconditional love will be a stimulation of the spirit. Relationships will become easier, new friendships will blossom, and charity towards strangers will become obvious and natural behaviors in the world. It will be a great disadvantage to oneself to harm another person, either physically or psychologically, since whatever pain one inflicts on another is experienced as one's own in our life review. Each one of us, quite simply, becomes our own judge and jury when we leave the body, and we set up the circumstances for our next incarnation. An even more immediate and palpable motivation is the feelings of joy and the peace of mind we experience when behaving according to our true nature. Looked at another way, what was our real purpose for being born into the circumstances of our present families? Were you born into a Muslim family or a Christian family or a Jewish family or a Hindu family or a Buddhist family? Why should an accident of birth make you a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, a Hindu, or a Buddhist, or anything else? Instead, think for yourself. Take nothing for granted. Question everything. Reach your own conclusions based on your own experience, intuition, and common sense. Those are among the gifts the bountiful universe bestowed when we were given the opportunity to be born in a human body. We should use those gifts well and make the most of this precious opportunity, for that is what we are here to do. Who says it is an accident of birth? What if we choose our parents with a suitable propensity to help us in our path to learn about love? Gurdjieff's commandments. George Ivanovich Gurdjieff was an influential spiritual teacher of the 20th century who observed that most humans live their lives in a state of hypnotic waking sleep, but that it is possible to transcend to a higher state of consciousness and achieve our full human potential if we have a strong desire to change ourselves. To help us along the path of self-betterment, the following are Gurdjieff's commandments, according to his daughter, Renia de Assisa, as recorded in the spiritual journey of Alejandro Jodorowsky. Number 1, ground your attention on yourself. Be conscious at every moment of what you are thinking, sensing, feeling, desiring, and doing. 2, always finish what you have begun. 3, whatever you are doing, do it as well as possible. 4, do not become attached to anything that can destroy you in the course of time. 5, develop your generosity, but secretly. 6, treat everyone as if he or she was a close relative. 7, organize what you have disorganized. 8, learn to receive and give thanks for every gift. 9, stop defining yourself. 10, do not lie or steal, for you lie to yourself and you steal from yourself. 11, help your neighbor, but do not make him dependent. 12, do not encourage others to imitate you. 13, make work plans and accomplish them. 14, do not take up too much space. 15, make no useless movements or sounds. 16, if you lack faith, pretend to have it. 17, do not allow yourself to be impressed by strong personalities. 18, do not regard anyone or anything as your possession. 19, share fairly. 20, do not seduce. 21, sleep and eat only as much as necessary. 22, do not speak of your personal problems. 23, do not express judgment or criticism when you are ignorant of most of the factors involved. 24, do not establish useless friendships. 25, do not follow fashions. 26, do not sell yourself. 27, respect contracts you have signed. 28, be on time. 29, never envy the luck or success of anyone. 30, say no more than necessary. 31, do not think of the profits your work will engender. 32, never threaten anyone. 33, keep your promises. 34, in any discussion, put yourself in the other person's place. 35, admit that someone else may be superior to you. 36, do not eliminate, but transmute. 37, conquer your fears, for each of them represents a camouflaged desire. 38, help others to help themselves. 39, conquer your aversions and come closer to those who inspire rejection in you. 40, do not react to what others say about you, whether praise or blame. 41, transform your pride into dignity. 42, transform your anger into creativity. 43, transform your greed into respect for beauty. 44, transform your envy into admiration for the values of the other. 45, transform your hate into charity. 46, neither praise nor insult yourself. 47, regard what does not belong to you as if it did not belong to you. 48, do not complain. 49, develop your imagination. 50, never give orders to gain the satisfaction of being obeyed. 51, pay for services performed for you. 52, do not proselytize your work or ideas. 53, do not try to make others feel for your emotions such as pity, admiration, sympathy, or complicity. 54, do not try to distinguish yourself by your appearance. 55, never contradict. Instead, be silent. 55, do not contract debts. Acquire and pay immediately. 57, if you offend someone, ask his or her pardon. If you have offended a person publicly, apologize publicly. 58, when you realize you have said something that is mistaken, do not persist in error through pride. Instead, immediately retract it. 59, never defend your old ideas simply because you are the one who expressed them. 60, do not keep useless objects. 61, do not adorn yourself with exotic ideas. 62, do not have your photograph taken with famous people. 63, justify yourself to no one and keep your own counsel. 64, never define yourself by what you possess. 65, never speak of yourself without considering that you might change. 66, accept that nothing belongs to you. 67, when someone asks your opinion about something or someone, speak only of his or her qualities. 68, when you become ill, regard your illness as your teacher, not as something to be hated. 69, look directly and do not hide yourself. 70. Do not forget your dead, but accord them a limited place and do not allow them to invade your life. 71. Wherever you live, always find a space that you devote to the sacred. 72. When you perform a service, make your effort inconspicuous. 73. If you decide to work to help others, do it with pleasure. 74. If you are hesitating between doing and not doing, take the risk of doing. 75. Do not try to be everything to your spouse, except that there are things that cannot give him or her, but which others can. 76. When someone is speaking to an interested audience, do not contradict that person and steal his or her audience. 71. Live on money you have earned. 78. Never brag about amorous adventures. 79. Never glorify your weaknesses. 80. Never visit someone only to pass the time. 81. Obtain things in order to share them. And finally, 82. If you are meditating and a devil appears, make the devil meditate too. Power of the mind. Gujarev touched upon the power of the mind in his writings, and spiritual masters have long emphasized the incredible power of the mind over the body. Simply stated, intention and thought have amazing healing properties if focused properly. The human mind, when connected to its source through inner work, is more powerful than any disease. Our real identity is not our body, but the consciousness of our mind. The human mind is energy, and with the correct training, it has the power to change matter. A first step to realize is that matter is simply the manifestation of energy. This simple fact will help us awaken and realize the divine nature of identity. Both myth and history relates that there have been an abundance of people who, through their minds and light bodies, have developed the ability to access higher dimensions. These people who knew the secrets of the gate of eternity have been called prophets, seers, masters, and diviners. In essence, we are electric beings vibrating within an energetic universe. We are both receivers and transmitters of energy, a vibrational transmitter. We are constantly sending out signals in the form of frequencies and vibrations of energy that will either attract or repel other vibrational beings, events, and experiences. These seemingly fantastic claims are being verified by scientists around the world. One double-blind study conducted by biologist Dr. Bernard Grad found that seeds which had been prayed over by a healer prior to being planted grew faster and more successfully than those that had not been prayed over. Biologist Dr. Carol Nash, in a double-blind study, found that the growth of bacteria can also be influenced by conscious intention. Another study showed that mice with a predicted 100% fatality could be cured. These replications using skeptical volunteers in laboratories at Queens College and St. Joseph's College in Brooklyn, New York, produced an overall cure rate of 87.9% in 33 experimental mice through nothing more than intention and the laying on of hands, similar to Reiki healing. This conforms with some observational studies which suggests that people who perform regular spiritual practices tend to live longer. Another study points to a possible mechanism called interleukin, IL-6. Increased levels of IL-6 are associated with an increased incidence of disease. A research study involving 1,700 older adults showed that those who attended church were half as likely to have elevated levels of IL-6, thus suggesting that regular praying is associated with a positive effect. Last but definitely not least, Dr. Glenn Ryan found that love sent through conscious intention has transformative effects on the human DNA molecule, causing it to heal itself when in the presence of loving energy. Awareness brings realization. Once we have realization, there is the beginning of awakening. This awakening will bring us to an enlightened state. In the light, we can identify more and more with our true nature. And finally, we can know that this power is within each of us and has been there all along. The human form is linked into multiple aspects of itself, each section expressing a range of frequencies or vibrations within a network of zones of energy and spheres within spheres. Simply stated, love is the essence of all. Many of us have forgotten who we are and why we are here. Once our blinders are removed, according to whatever disciplined practice of changing our minds we choose, we will see the truth for ourselves. Once embarked on the sincere desire to know the truth, a portal is opened in which we receive all the help we allow towards this goal. Herein lies the meaning of faith and the reason for optimism. It is difficult to explain in words this otherworldly process of change, but words are helpful in this dimension. One person's words need not seemingly agree with yours when the goal is the same. Specific thoughts and intentions which are generated by the mind can be used to frequency modulate the coherent biofields from the heart. When one is in a state of love, which is the content of truth, the coherence is enhanced and the biofields become stronger. This allows for a resonance between the coherent fields of the heart and the coherent fields around the DNA molecule. Such an interaction allows the frequency of information associated with the original intention to manifest as a physical change in the DNA, whether it be conformational change in the structure of the helix, a change in DNA replication, or a shift in the electrical properties. Hypercommunication and DNA. To fully understand the relationship of spirit, body, and mind in the next human, it is necessary to re-examine the DNA molecule and how it can relate to remarkable human abilities. In people, hypercommunication is most often encountered when one suddenly gains access to information that is outside one's knowledge base. Such hypercommunication is then experienced as a future inspiration or the seventh sense. The Italian composer Giuseppe Tartini, for instance, dreamt one night that a devil sat at his bedside playing the violin. The next morning, Tartini was able to note down the piece exactly from memory, and he named it The Devil's Trill Sonata. When hypercommunication occurs, one can observe in the DNA, as well as in the human being, a very special phenomenon. As we learned in the DNA Mysteries chapter, when Russian scientists irradiated DNA samples with laser light on screen, a typical wave pattern was formed. When they removed the DNA sample, the wave pattern did not disappear, but instead remained. Controlled experiments replicated this result, showing that the pattern still came from the removed sample, whose energy field apparently remained. This effect is now called the phantom DNA effect. It is surmised that energy from outside of space and time still flows through the activated wormholes after the DNA is removed. These are tunnel connections between entirely different areas in the universe through which information can be transmitted outside of space and time. The DNA attracts these bits of information and passes them on to our consciousness. This process of hypercommunication, also called telepathy or channeling, is most effective in a state of relaxation. Consensus in the scientific community, however, does not view telepathy as a real phenomenon. Many rigorous studies seeking to detect, understand, and utilize telepathy have been done, but according to the uninformed view among scientists, telepathy lacks replicating results from well-controlled experiments. Yet, interestingly, telepathy is a common theme in modern fiction and science fiction, with many comic book superheroes and supervillains having telepathic abilities. Variations of telepathy can be observed in the animal kingdom. Are researchers measuring the wrong variables? Science can only test repeating phenomenon. Animals express consciousness through instinct. In addition to instinct, humans possess the highest quality of consciousness, also called self-awareness or reflective thought. Self-awareness is the difference between animals and humans. Reflection is the power to turn one's consciousness upon oneself, to know oneself, and especially to know that one is aware. The ability to study math, physics, philosophy, astronomy, and many other fields is due to a person's unique ability to reflect inwardly. The expanded abilities of self-awareness are abstract reasoning, free will, creativity, and foresight. Our culture is orientated towards reducing one's self-awareness rather than expanding it, and this sums up our reverse priority age. In earlier times, humanity was more strongly connected to group consciousness, and just like many animals, we acted together as a group. Relationships were necessary for humans, and safety was maintained through numbers. If an individual separated from the group in Paleolithic times, the chance of survival was slim. When we began to develop and experience personal individuality, we humans have almost forgotten hypercommunication completely. Now that we are fairly stable in our individual consciousness, we can create a new form of group consciousness, namely one in which we attain access to all information via our DNA, and without being forced or remotely controlled regarding what to do with the new information. We now know that, just as on the internet, our DNA can feed its data into the network and can call up data from the network, thereby establishing contact with other participants in the network. remote healing, Reiki, telepathy, or remote sensing, plus other supernormal abilities, can now be explained. Experiments by Rupert Sheldrake show that some domesticated animals know from afar when their owners plan to return home. That can be freshly interpreted and explained via the concepts of group consciousness and hypercommunication. Any collective consciousness cannot be sensibly used over any period of time without a distinctive individuality. Otherwise, we would revert to a primitive herd instinct that is easily manipulated. Hypercommunication in the new millennium means something quite different, as we are beginning to remember our lost abilities. Researchers think that if humans with full individuality would regain group consciousness, they would have a godlike power to create, alter, and even shape things on Earth. And humanity appears collectively moving towards such a group consciousness of this new kind. Quantum DNA. The relationship humans have with electronic devices has been called the Manitou effect. The word Manitou is a Native American expression for the Great Spirit. The side effects encountered most often in hypercommunication are inexplicable electromagnetic fields in the vicinity of the persons concerned, where electronic devices like computers or televisions appear to be irritated and cease to function for hours. Yet when the electromagnetic field slowly dissipates, the devices function normally again. Studies have measured the fact that when people are awake, the human brain produces enough electricity to power a small light bulb. There are distinct connections now emerging between quantum mechanics and consciousness. For humans, consciousness is the intelligence or the organizing principle behind the arising of form in our world. The quantum field or pure consciousness is influenced by intention and desire. Quantum DNA does not work in a linear fashion. Thus, people cannot compartmentalize DNA within the function it serves. For example, within the most complex machines on the planet, devices that may have tens of thousands of parts, the parts will always do the same thing. There may be a device 1,000 times more complicated than a fine watch, but the springs and gears are always springs and gears. They do the same thing over and over in a complex way. All of the most sophisticated electronics essentially operate the same way. Over and over, they provide millions of identical processes, and the electron paths always do the same switching, a singular process done rapidly with linear complexity. But this is not the case with DNA. It is not a machine. We must start to recognize DNA as being interactive with itself. When one part changes, the part next to it also changes. You cannot therefore identify a singular purpose of specific DNA parts. Think of a complex clock. What if it were interdimensional and the spring could suddenly become a gear and the gear could change shape and size? Think of this: a part that is no longer needed simply vanishes, and if something is needed that is not there, then it appears. In addition, this quantum clock decides on its own to change the time frame it was designed to work with. Strange? That is quantum DNA. In a quantum state, there is no time. In a quantum state, there is no place or spot where anything is located. Quantum mechanics dictates that any matter, if you want to call it that, or any energy, if you want to call it that, is everywhere, together, all as one. Imagine something so complex. Now imagine that it is duplicated hundreds of millions of times within your body. Over a decade ago, Vladimir Popnin, a Russian quantum biologist, used light in an experiment with one molecule of DNA. In this experiment, he discovered a multi-dimensional field around DNA. Light patterned itself into a mathematical equation or sine wave when DNA was present. He had discovered that DNA had a quantum field. Not only that, it was a quantum field that was somehow filled with information. How else could the field pattern light into a sine wave? Vladimir Popnin showed that even a single DNA molecule actually had a field around it. Those who compiled the Human Genome Project wanted to know how the 3 billion DNA chemicals could create more than 26,000 genes within the human body. They did not recognize DNA as being in a quantum state, even though the very science of DNA logically suggests that it has to be quantum. They weren't looking for that, so of course they did not find it. Instead, they counted chemicals and looked for codes, and they found them in a very odd arrangement. They discovered that of the 3 billion chemicals in the DNA double helix, all of the genes were being created in the protein encoded parts of DNA. 3.5% of DNA was creating all the genes. More than 90% of the chemical makeup of DNA seemed, therefore, to be random. It does absolutely nothing that they could see or understand. Even to this day, science does not see the obvious that 90% of DNA is quantum and only 3.5% is linear. The placebo effect. Consciousness is the intelligent force that began as the blueprint of who we are and which manifests itself as a particular form. The entire image of a human being is contained in the microscopic DNA strands within the fertilized egg in the womb. Each of us has our own unique spiritual DNA. It is just as unique as our own fingerprints. Some refer to it as Akashic records. Others know it as a total recall of their past lives. Our spiritual DNA is our blueprint for this lifetime. It contains our soul's past memory bank, as well as our purpose in this current incarnation. Just as our physical and mental characteristics are recorded in our physical DNA, our spiritual paths and our soul purposes are recorded in our spiritual DNA. As such, each of us has a specific spiritual purpose. But the mind can play tricks on us, and our purpose may sometimes become opaque. A good example of this is when a patient undergoes a sham treatment for a disorder, such as taking a sugar pill, yet still experiences a measurable improvement in their condition. This is known as the placebo effect. As such, medical science is only beginning to understand the ways in which the mind can influence the body. The placebo effect, for example, demonstrates that people themselves can at times bring relief from their medical symptoms or suffering simply by believing their cure to be effective. This also demonstrates how the mind can play tricks on the body. And interestingly, this can be true even when the patient knows they're taking a placebo. The body's ability to heal itself is far more amazing than anything modern medicine can create. Scientists, therefore, have discovered that patients can benefit from being treated with sham drugs, even if the patient is told that it contains no active ingredient. As such, medical science is only beginning to understand the ways in which the mind can influence the body. The placebo effect, for example, demonstrates that people themselves can at times bring relief from their medical symptoms or suffering simply by believing their cures to be effective. This also demonstrates how the mind can play tricks on the body, and interestingly, this can be true even when the patient knows they're taking a placebo. The body's ability to heal itself is far more amazing than anything modern medicine can create. Scientists, therefore, have discovered that patients can benefit from being treated with sham drugs, even if the patient is told that it contains no active ingredient. This finding suggests that the placebo effect may work even without the need for any deception on the part of the doctor, as has been previously thought. Quote, "I don't think it would work," says senior author Anthony Lembo of the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center on IBS. Quote, "He felt awkward asking patients to literally take a placebo, but to my surprise, it seemed to work for many of them," end quote. Of course, there are no ill side effects to taking placebos. As you can imagine, this information brings much distress to the pharmaceutical industry, whose products, over time, seem to have less and less effect on patients. Could it be that our human DNA evolution is advancing to the point where drugs are no longer useful? Pure divine energy. In some Eastern yogic traditions, the transmission of spiritual awareness can be quickly achieved by awakening a person's spiritual energy, or kundalini, with a transmission of energy called Shaktipat. The term Shakti in Sanskrit means pure divine energy, and Pat refers to that energy coming down or entering into a subject. In the tradition of Shaktipat, a guru would touch the third eye, the point in the center of the forehead of the spiritual seeker, and initiate a cascade of insight, energy, or even physical transformation. The Hindu guru Swami Muktananda was one of the most famous yogis who regularly transmit Shaktipat as part of his spiritual teaching. There are many stories from his followers, even the disillusioned ones, who reported the transformations that they experienced, some very suddenly, others more gradual. Some devotees reported a sensation of immense heat, energy, and insight, sometimes involving a momentary loss of consciousness. Others reported only mild sensations with lingering long-term effects that subtly changed their lives. Certain forms of energy transmissions can affect living entities in numerous ways. Energy transmission has been shown to affect the genetics of plants, which in turn increase their nutritional value and yields. It can also render harmful microbes less virulent. Energy transmissions can reduce viral loads in people with HIV or hepatitis B and C. Lastly, it can alter the mass and sizes of atoms and affect their boiling and melting points. These measurable and physical effects raise the question of whether belief is even necessary to experience a ritual's effects. Ongoing research suggests that something tangible may be transmitted when a person receives a blessing, an energy transmission, or even a ritual initiation into a spiritual order. There may be something physically held in the body of the teacher that is transferred to the student, something not communicated simply through words and language. What is passed down through each successive generation is a teaching and a form, but what is passed on through direct parental lineage is what could be called the spiritual DNA of the teaching. Spiritual DNA even appears to be passed on through the blood and the genes. Encoded in this spiritual DNA is a body of knowledge, particular methods, and principles for living within a practice. The hard-coded knowledge that not able to be communicated through language is therefore embodied within each successive teacher within that lineage. For this sort of knowledge, we can use the word meme, referring to an individual unit of cultural or spiritual knowledge that does go viral. An enlightened state of mind which can guide us with much needed instruction into the newly awakened world can be found in the promise of many historical traditions. Certainly, this is one of the core concepts within all of the world's mythologies and sacred traditions. Numerous traditions teach that a race of highly evolved, not earthbound humans inhabit the Milky Way and other galaxies. They are our ancestors. Many of these traditions reveal that the next human, as described by Einstein, are those who have succeeded in transcending human limitations and who have scaled the cosmic ladder to a dimension that leads to the center of the galaxy. These beings have transformed or morphed into light beings, yet they retain physical bodies. These advanced men and women of various ages achieved or perfected the luminous garment of the liberated soul body. It may be these next humans who want to see us spiritually evolve to their level. The chakras. The body's energies can be formulated within a framework called chakras. The variously shaped chakras are described as wheel-like vortices spinning within the physical entity. In classical Hinduism and Buddhism, chakras mean wheels. They spin, spiral, curve, twist, crisscross, and weave themselves into patterns of magnificent beauty. In the East, these wheel-like vortices have been called the Tibetan energy ring. In yoga traditions, this ring is represented by two curved lines that cross 7 times, symbolically encasing the 7 chakras. In the West, a person's body energy is seen as the caduceus, the intertwined serpents around a staff, also crossing 7 times, and initially associated with the Greek god Hermes, the messenger for the gods, and later used as a symbol in alchemy and an icon of modern medicine. The chakras act like invisible hubs that keep all of our energy systems functioning as a single unit. These patterns also become embedded in fields of thoughts, emotions, feelings, beliefs, and attitudes, as well as within physical and biological patterns. It is a toroidal living system, continually weaving, crossing over, ever expanding, and contracting. The double helix of DNA also shares this pattern in the microcosm. The 7 chakra energy points in the human body can be thought of as 7 spiritual centers. Although invisible to the average humans, chakras can be seen by individuals who are capable of seeing etheric energy. According to famed psychic Edgar Cayce, the chakras are associated with specific endocrine glands. The psychic readings of Edgar Cayce were said to have resulted from the activation of the Kundalini within the pineal system, resulting in cosmic consciousness. In other words, Cayce apparently had a Kundalini experience during each reading. Cayce had correlated the chakra centers to the endocrine glands, which secrete powerful hormone message directly into the bloodstream and affecting all parts of the body. These energy centers, called a plexus, receive and transmit energy, and each is situated at a major endocrine gland and nerve bundle within the physical body. Each chakra is connected to and associated with a different section of the body. Each of the 7 chakras has a color, and a different gemstones or crystals can be associated with these centers and used during healing sessions. Understanding and leveraging chakras can promote physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being, in addition to assisting in the manifestation work we must complete within our lifetime. This again is another form and description of spiritual awareness that can open the mind to transformational experiences. Chakra control. Everything in existence has a natural vibration, from every atom to the vastness of the universe. A human's harmonic vibrational points are similar to the strings on a guitar, with each producing a different sound. Similarly, our 7 chakras vibrate at different frequencies, and according to traditional Indian medicine, they are believed to exist within the surface of the subtle body of all living beings. When in balance, chakras harmonize a person's body, mind, and spirit. When out of harmony, they can cause disease, mental illness, and force us to reside in a lower state of consciousness. Unfortunately, most people are unaware of their chakra energy systems, not just because we've been denied the knowledge, but because they are effectively inoperative as a result of our inactive pineal glands. The central role of the chakras is the raising of Kundalini. As it raises, it pierces the various centers and causes various levels of self-realization. This piercing activates the siddhis and brings the onset of unusual human skills and capabilities. The resulting release of various siddhis will continue to rise until reaching the crown of the head, resulting in a union with the divine. The methods regarding how to raise one's Kundalini have generally been a closely held secret within the Indian mystery schools. In the West, activating the chakras has historically been regarded as accessing occult powers. Kundalini Shakti is an energy that resides in a coiled form at the bottom of our spinal cord. Once the Kundalini Shakti, also known as serpent energy, gets dikasa, or direction, it starts flowing upward from the bottom of our spine to reach the brain, where it can completely alchemize its energy into vital hormones and higher spiritual energy. Once the full Kundalini has been awakened, it completes a circuit between the genital parts up to the brain, spiraling up through the spine. During this experience, all 7 chakra energy centers within our body climax with a breakthrough opening. After this opening, the person then possesses great intelligence that is paired with wisdom and strength. For some devotees, this is a biological description of what happens when a person becomes enlightened. Misaligned chakras. Chakras are the nexus where the prana, meaning our biophysical energy field, radiates throughout the human body. Prana is the basic component of the subtle body, our energy field, and it radiates throughout our entire chakra system. Full knowledge of prana and the chakras is an important key to having a healthy and long life. This knowledge will also provide insight into the source of energy within the universe. But as with everything, if abused or out of alignment, chakras too can bring ill effects on people. Sometimes chakras fall out of alignment and energy in the body is then lost. This can happen due to unhealthy living, poor eating habits, stress, or any sort of negative energy. Calm meditation can realign the chakras, thus returning this energy to the body. We will all eventually die, at which time our prana will exit the physical body, and our spirit will enter into a purely energetic realm. Buddhist tradition maintains that most human spirits will remain in the bardo for 49 days on the other side before the individual soul is reincarnated into a new body. Author George Cavasalis warns about the interface between human chakras and alien implants. He proposes that there can be disadvantages to having fully activated chakras. For one, chakras may limit the amount of energy coming in from our central core and therefore our energy fields. Chakras separate and compartmentalize the energy of our core essence, which makes it easier for others to attach cords and drain our energy from us. Cavasalis maintains that chakras can be manipulated such that specific energies are easily accessed, thereby allowing the control and manipulation of our energy fields. When abused, the chakras may act as blockages of energy that can cause physical deterioration of the body, as well as psychological illnesses. Chakras keep our body's energy field segmented, thereby making it easier to manipulate from an external source, namely malevolent ETs who abduct unsuspecting humans, or corrupt gurus who draw life forces from their victims. It is therefore important to be aware of their energy and maintain good chakra health. The human etheric field. Energy researchers note that every mature adult is surrounded by an energetic force field, which is sometimes called an etheric field. It radiates about 45 centimeters out from our body, but it can spike 6 to 9 meters if driven by intense emotions. This is how people across the street can subconsciously detect a stranger's emotional state even before they look at the person. The etheric field is full of information and emotional state about our feelings, our state of mind, and of course, our thoughts. Even when we walk past another person, there is an automatic and unconscious exchange of energy. It is usually in the form of a rolling sinusoidal wave, but it can also be a zigzag or a sawtooth wave as well. Etheric energy moves in a vortex fashion because a vortex provides the least resistance to the flowing motion. It follows that physical matter, which is materialized etheric energy, also seeks the same low resistance toroidal motion. Both water and air also share this intrinsic vortex motion. The human aura is a symphonic spectrum composed of many individual energy frequencies. This is an individual's intrinsic frequency. This explains the association within ancient Eastern traditions relating certain colors with certain parts of the human body, as described as chakras. Humans are not the only creatures with auras, however. Every living thing has an aura surrounding it. Auras can only be seen under certain conditions, along with adequate training and meditation. As a whole being, the human body resonates to a broad spectrum of etheric frequencies. If the human being is healthy, their frequencies are in perfect harmony with each other. Each person also has an etheric speed based on their awareness, emotions, sentiments, feelings, diet, health, and other factors. Similar to the torus energy flow, human energy field flows downwards from a faster resonance to a slower one. It simply cannot flow upwards and go the other way. If the slower person resonates with a faster person, then their energy will notch up a click or two, but they will not usually be able to sustain it for long. At least not from a chance encounter, for example, such as walking past one another. This explains why fear is infectious and why thoughts and feelings can jump to another person. It also explains why a sensitive person may feel exhausted when walking through a crowded shopping mall, as that person might suffer from the numerous energy pulls coming from others. With some understanding of the true nature of our spirit, body, and mind, it is now time to take a journey into the nature of our souls.